Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the table. I'm Amy Norton, and my friend and colleague Maria Guy is joining me today. And you may notice we are without some of our partners in crime. Tracy Rader and Jessica Rimmer had conflicts today. And Maria, this is going to be a wild ride. We're like Thelma and Louise.
I know. It's just the two of us. Who knows what we'll talk about?
I know. We may be really rebellious and just go off the rails today. Kidding, of course. Well, so Maria, how are you today?
I am doing well. The weather's warming up, and that's always nice. Enjoying spring.
Same here. We've got a fine coating of yellow pollen all over everything, so it makes me sneeze every 30 seconds, but I'll take it. The beautiful sunny weather is a good thing.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad we get to have this conversation today. Last week, we did a little preparation for our conversation today, and I always get excited while that video is playing as we're about to start. I just feel like we have the opportunity to talk about some really important things for the women who are joining us and for any men who are with us too. And our topic on this particular series of Welcome to the Table is about emotional agility. And last week, we began our conversation in this place talking about what emotional agility is. And I actually saw a physical example of what this looks like this week. Any of you who tuned into the national championship basketball game watched Gonzaga and Baylor play, and Baylor obviously won. But it was astounding to me to see how physically agile those basketball players are. It's just incredible to see how they do what they do at such a championship level. And I was thinking, getting ready for today, what a great example for us physically about what emotional agility is, that it's really us developing awareness and strength in terms of our awareness of our emotions and what we're feeling. And then
I think we lost Amy there. She froze up a little bit. She'll join us back here in a minute. But
having strength and mobility. Whoops, that was weird. You blacked out too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So we froze up a little bit there, but you were talking about that physical agility paralleling the emotional agility. And as you were describing that, Amy, I was thinking it's, for a basketball player, it's knowing where do I need to be? What should I be doing now? How do I prepare for that next step? It's that awareness piece married with being able to adjust quickly when things are moving really fast and split-second decisions need to be made.
Yes, so good. And with that really tees us up to get into talking about our topic for today, which is the what behind emotional agility. Last week, we really talked about the power of self-awareness. You'll remember that we talked about having internal and external self-awareness and noticing what we're feeling, paying attention. Maria walked us through a really excellent exercise of being able to stop and observe what it is that we're feeling. And I'm curious, we asked you to think about this last week yourselves and reflect back on a time when you could have done it differently. So we'd love for you to drop in the chat if you have any ahas or insights from that exercise. We'd love to know. And our good friend and tech guru today, Kevin DeShazo, who's in the background helping us, he'll pass some information to us if we're not seeing it on the chat. But we'd love to hear from you what your thinking was on that. And I can actually tell a little story on myself. Where I've gotten it wrong and where I've tried to get it right. So back in the early days of COVID and everybody under one roof and working together all the time, my husband and I actually had a COVID fight. We chalked it up to that. Neither one of us were at our best. And he is a pioneer. I'm a nurturer, if you're familiar with our voices language. And he lobbed a grenade at me and I lobbed it right back. And it just spiraled into a terrible situation, Maria. It was awful. And earlier this week, he came home having had a really frustrating day, and I got grenade launched. And it was interesting because I could have gone there and launched it right back, but I noticed that I felt angry, and I took a breath. I stopped to observe, and it was messy. It was definitely not a flawless demonstration of this, but I took a breath, and I didn't respond the way I wanted to respond. And we didn't have another COVID fight. So I think that was good.
I call that progress. Just that everything that we're talking about, right, is when we feel those strong emotions, when we are in a situation that is emotionally charged, it's time to turn on that observer in you, as well as you, the person who's in that, and say, wait a minute, what's happening here? Because most of us, I hope, don't operate and live in an emotionally charged world all the time. That would be exhausting. That would be terrible if you are in that situation. But most of us, I would say, we operate with ebbs and flows and highs and lows throughout our day. And hopefully when you have that situation that is emotionally charged, that's when you need to start paying attention. What would I call what I'm feeling? What would I call their emotion? And then be able to, like that basketball player, be able to make that split-second decision. Where do I want to take this? I can prolong this fight by lobbing, that grenade back, or I can say, wait a minute, let me pause here. It's going to be messy. It's never easy, but there's a different way to proceed that might be more healthy in order for us to deal with conflict, because conflict is not to be avoided necessarily, but really be intentional about how we're processing through that conflict.
100%. And so what we want to do with this idea today is give you a hack. So what do you do about developing an ability to be more agile with your emotions? What are those steps? So we've come up with an idea here we want to share with you today, that it's really about learning to express or suppress your emotions and learning how to verbally engage, what to do there. So we really want to talk about that from a know yourself to lead yourself place. So Kevin, our trusty assistant, thank you for sharing the tool for us there. So you are
all right. So you froze up there, but keep going, Amy.
I don't know what's happening. I am on my Ethernet connection. I'm not sure what's happening there. Is it clear now?
Yes.
Okay, goodness. So I think the key point here is remembering that we've got to be aware of our tendency to behave in certain ways and develop with that. Do we need to express it or suppress it? So that action and is the reality what we want? My example with the conversation I was having with my husband, it could have turned into a conflagration, but it ended up staying in the conversation mode because I was aware that I had a desire to act on an angry feeling I had, and I governed myself.
Yes, it's all about knowing yourself to lead yourself in those situations, right? Is to observe, pause, and decide, how do I want to proceed forward? So this idea, I call them scripts. I tell my clients, develop scripts for yourself, a go-to that you will ask yourself, or a go-to phrase that you will share that gives you a moment to pause. So the question you want to ask at this point is, do I want to express this emotion? Do I want to suppress this emotion? Now, you might be immediately thinking suppression. I don't think we're supposed to do that, right? Well, you can't express everything you're feeling all the time. That's not healthy either. So I'll share a story of something that happened to me, I don't know, probably a decade or more ago, with someone that I was working for. There are certain people that you work for that you can talk about anything and they're open, there's curiosity, even though it's a tough conversation. And then there's some people who are not going to react well. So the person I was working for at the time was a person that didn't have a great reaction to hard conversations. And I had to talk about something really hard, which is gender pay gap, compensation conversations, which are always very sensitive, very difficult to have. I don't enjoy conflict, but I needed to address this pay gap. And so as I brought up the subject, he did not react well. He was very offended that I would bring this up. And it turned into a, how dare you bring this up kind of conversation.
Wow.
And so it was really emotionally charged at that point because he was visibly angry that I had brought this up. And at this point, I'm not used to someone talking to me like that. And I felt the anger and the emotions and the tears begin to well up. And I am not a person given to strong emotions or given to tears. You know, most of you know my background is in construction, and my motto is there's no crying in construction. This is one of the 2 times that I felt like crying in 20 years. And I just thought, I am so mad. I could just scream at this person and let them have it and justify, you know, why I'm bringing the subject up. But I didn't. So this was a perfect time to suppress. It was not the time for me to stand there and scream or cry or have a, you know, difficult conversation, because at that point you're just not capable of having the best conversation. And so I told him, I need to go away because I can't talk to you right now, before I started. So I just left. I got in my car and I thought, I just need to drive away from here as far as possible. But I realized I had a meeting in about 20 or 30 minutes. So I drove around the block a couple of times. I calmed down. Everything got back to normal. And I thought, go take care of your meeting. So I was able to go do that. The way I'm wired, I'm able to compartmentalize things like that. Yeah. This is a bomb ready to go. But if I put it in this box, it can go off a little bit later. I got to go deal with this right now. So I went about my day. We did end up having a conversation the next day when both of us had calmed down and were able to get, there was an apology. There was this, you know, a much more civil conversation. So the time to suppress was in one of those situations when it was very emotionally charged. Personal topic that we're talking, very sensitive topic. So it was best that we hold and wait and have that conversation another time. And we had a much better conversation because I was able to suppress that. So sometimes there is a call for asking, you know, is this a time to say, not right now, let's not finish this conversation, or I need to express what's happening. I need to say what's going on here.
Maria, that's so good. And you can really see the connection back to knowing yourself to lead yourself. So in that moment, whether you were using the handholds of the tool or not, you were actually intentionally considering your feelings and your emotions and doing something about that to drive the reality to a place that is productive. Right. I'm curious, how was the relationship? How did that develop over time after you demonstrated emotional agility there? Did it help you in your ongoing relationship with this person?
I wish I had had more of this vocabulary and language, because that relationship sometimes was strained and sometimes it was flowing smoothly. So we went through iterations, and it's difficult when it's the person that you report to, right? Yeah. And I prefer harmonious, collaborative type of relationships, but I realized that a lot of the work that needed to be done, I ended up doing it on my side. There wasn't a lot of reciprocation. So it was either you accept Maria and be a team player, or stand your ground and now you're in opposition. And so I felt like I was constantly adjusting in order to get to where this relationship was functioning. Because at the time, we're both executives. Mm-hmm. We can't hide when we're not getting along. As much as we think we're good at that, we're not. People sense it, people feel it. And ultimately that was my motivator. It's like, you are setting a bad example. So you better figure it out, get on board with this person. And chances are you are going to work with someone that you don't see 100% eye to eye with. And so that's the choice you have to make. Wait a minute, what's my motivator here? What can I use in order to continue to work on this relationship for the sake of the people around us, for the sake of the company? And so that was my motivator, but I didn't have the tools to even name what was happening, except that this isn't right. I don't like this. How do I make this stop? And so sometimes I think I made good decisions, and sometimes I probably could have, used a little bit of coaching, a little bit of help from someone.
Yeah, that's such a good just microcosm of life, I think, and I'm imagining you in that situation as that basketball player you're feeling what you're feeling. You've got somebody with their hands up trying to block you from the goal. And what do? How do you get the ball in the basket? So that's becoming a good analogy for our discussion today on being agile. You have to have strength and a lot of character and a lot of other attributes to be able to manage those messy situations. And I love your point about the fact that this is messy. It continued to be bumpy. Just because you learn this concept today is not a magic wand on making everything going forward perfect and easy, I don't think.
Exactly. It's a constant thing. That's why we talk about the infinity loop on that particular tool, know yourself to lead yourself. Because just when you think, okay, I think I'm on a good place with this person, guess what? There's going to be conflict with another person. There's going to be an emotional situation, or just when you think things are going smooth with my husband or with my kids or with co-worker, whatever it is, something is going to come up. But now what we're doing is we are putting tools in your toolkit, right? So that you'll be able to pause and say, wait a minute, what's in my bag here? What can I use? What concept can I apply to this particular situation so that I can navigate with greater intentionality, but also for the sake of the relationship or the people around you? You need to have something to fall back on. And so hopefully today, the tool that we're equipping you with is to ask, do I need to express? Do I need to suppress right now? How can I be emotionally agile in this situation so that I don't end up making a mess that's bigger than the one that I'm in right now, which
Absolutely.
Oftentimes you can still reset, even though maybe you just completely blew it, right? There's always that opportunity to reset and go back and say, I did not show up well. I need to apologize. And that's always an option.
Yeah, I think the beauty of reverse is just exactly that. We get to back up and try it again. That makes me looking some things back to that whole 10. Maria?
Yes.
Are we back?
We're back.
So let me tee it up quickly in case there's another glitch. So we were talking about an experience you had where you were about to overlook something, a response in somebody else that was going to be a little callous on your part if you just completely overlooked it. Would you talk to us about that and how that takes us to the other side of the express or not confess? Why I'm losing my word here. Express or suppress. Take it to the other side.
Yes, absolutely. So recently, this was only a few weeks ago, we were having dinner with friends and enjoying the company, and another friend showed up later. And as she came in, everyone said hello, and we were kind of wrapping up the evening, so it was kind of hello and goodbye. And as we said our goodbyes, we left. My husband, who is a nurturer, a feeler, if you will, versus my thinker, I'm a guardian. He said, hey, did you notice something? I think something was a little off with the friend who showed up later. And I said, no, I don't think so. I didn't notice anything. And I think that stayed in my head. And the next morning, as I was replaying that in my head, I thought, wait a minute, chances are I wouldn't have picked up on the disturbance in the force, if you will, from our friend who came in late. And so I told my husband, I said, you know what? I think you picked up on something that I just completely missed. And so when he asked me, did you notice anything? I was quick to say, nope, I don't think so. And I dismissed it. But when I said, you know what, you're probably right. You probably did pick up something. I think something may be off. You know what? Why don't we invite that friend over for dinner this week? And so we did. I sent her a text, hey, we'd love to have you over. And just the text interchange, I could tell she was so glad, so relieved to be included, if you will. And so I think maybe there was something there that she may have felt maybe a little left out. And so in reaching out and saying, hey, we see you, we are not dismissing you, come on over, we'd love to have you over for dinner. And so I was so grateful that we went back and fixed that, because sometimes I will miss those cues. And people who have where their feelings are readily accessible, it's a gift. It's like a superpower because you're picking up on things. You are noticing things, whether it's in the workplace or in your family or with friends, that, wait a minute, something's up, something's off. So this is a time Quint was expressing something and I was almost ready to suppress, but I came back, it took me a day to figure it out. Wait a minute, I think there's something there. So sometimes, for those of us who sometimes don't see those things, don't pick up on those cues, don't be quick to dismiss when someone says, is everything all right with that person? Or did you notice? Because chances are, maybe you don't notice. You're not picking up on those, but listen to that person that is sensitive, that does pick up on those things. Amy, I know you pick up on those things all the time, and you have actually saved us from sometimes when you're like, we should send friends to that mutual friend. I mean, flowers to that mutual friend. I'm like, oh, thank goodness for Amy. That never would have occurred to me, but yes, I'll pitch in. I'll send those flowers. Thank you for thinking of that.
Yes, I think it's great that we do that for each other. That's the beauty of having healthy relationships and a healthy awareness of what we are good at and where we need somebody to help us stand in the gap. And, your example is a great one. You're understanding your tendencies there and how the other person was able to help you see that you had missed something. And that's a wonderful thing. And the reverse is true. Sometimes I struggle with analysis paralysis, and it's hard for me to separate emotions from the facts. And that is definitely a tendency, hardwiring kind of thing. And it's great to have somebody who can be the voice of reason and help you sort yourself out and maybe save you from saying some things you wouldn't want to say. You can be the guardian. You are the guardian, but you can be the governor almost and help me have some discipline and discretion, I think, which is good.
Absolutely. Amy, I would love for you to share a little bit about the amygdala hijack. What happens? Why shouldn't we have those conversations when we're really emotionally charged? I hope you can come back and share all that amazing stuff.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So the interesting thing, when we're having an emotional surge, it's called a lizard brain, and it's the amygdala part of our brain that takes over, and it decision. So when we're feeling that, flame of anger rise up in us when something happens, it actually short circuits our ability to be productive. So we have tendencies when we have fear or anger or whatnot, and it might make us want to fight. It might make us want to jump in and do the verbal sparring and shut down or try to step back from something that feels threatening or risky. We might even freeze up. That tends to be what I do. I'll freeze up in the moment and I don't have anything to say. So understanding your tendency with what you do during those moments is actually clues about how to conduct yourself. If you know that you have a tendency to fight, and I'm going to go to the mat on this thing that's making me really mad, it may not have the greatest consequence. Being able to step back from that emotion, like we talked about last week, and pause, give yourself a minute to let that energy work through you, you can come back to the conversation in a more logical way. Same thing with my freeze response. I've realized that instead of feeling like I've failed, it's my body needs a minute to adjust, and then I can actually think of something to say. So that is a form of suppressing and expressing, but it actually comes from, your neurobiology, which is, I nerd out on this stuff, as you know.
Yeah. That's really good. We had a comment. There was a little bit in and out, going out. Amy, I'm going to try and recap what you said, that when we are in an emotionally charged situation, anger or fear or whatever it is, we have, like, our amygdala gets hijacked, if you will. So the lizard brain, that part of the brain, gets short-circuited. And so you can't really have a logical conversation. At that point, you're going to have one of three responses. You're going to fight, you're going to flee, or you're going to freeze. in that situation. So knowing your own tendency, what is your tendency? Are you up for a battle? Are you going to run away from the situation, or are you going to clam up? What is your tendency in that kind of situation? So understanding that about yourself is going to be really important, because now as you decide suppress or express, you may not be even able to say, I don't even know how to react right now. Well, then that's a perfect opportunity to pause that whole conversation, that situation, if possible, and say, I need to gather myself. I need to gather my thoughts and think about how I want to respond before we run away or say things that we didn't intend, or just stay quiet and take whatever this emotional situation is doing to us. So the fact is, you're going to encounter these situations, and at least having this knowledge of what's going on inside your brain. And actually, there's neurologically, there are hormones that are just awash on your brain, and it's going to take about 20 or 30 minutes for everything to neutralize and level back out to where you can think again. So even if you can give yourself a break to do that, that might be the most agile thing you can do at the moment, is to just pause and say, I can't do this right now. But don't avoid it. That's not an excuse for never coming back and having the conversation, or I don't talk about these kinds of things. It's just the pause that you need to come back and finish that conversation in a way that is going to be healthy and maintain that relationship intact without just losing or losing the relationship or fracturing that communication to where things can get really ugly and irreparable. Don't let things get to that point.
Yes. And I think this is a great place to remind everyone that it's hard to be emotionally agile. It's hard to be effective here. So we're not saying this is about you figuring out how to be perfect. It's giving yourself the healthy challenge to examine where you are in your emotional agility. Where do you need to practice things in a day?
So sorry about the breaking up here.
That is this is driving me.
I am so sorry, Amy. I don't know what's going on.
Yes. Maria, why don't you help us bring this to a close today? I fear that my technology is going to continue to wreak havoc on us here.
No problem. Okay, so what we want you to do is we want you to, first of all, be aware of this in case you run into a situation. Now you're armed, you're at least prepared with some tools. Do I express or do I suppress? But I also want you to go back and reflect through an experience like my experience, 10 plus years ago. As I look back and I say, okay, it was the right thing to do to not finish that conversation right there when I was feeling so emotional. So that was a good instance of suppress for now, but come back and have a healthy conversation. So go back and analyze a situation, an experience that you've had. Maybe you got it wrong. That's okay. But in going back and analyzing, you can actually build skills for the future. Or maybe you got it right. Well, that's good to know as well. And then analyze your own tendencies. What do you tend to do in very emotional situations? Fight, flight, or freeze? That's important to understand about yourself as well. So do that for your homework, if you will. And next week, we'll be back uncovering a little bit more. But I want to remind everyone that on the 28th of April, we are going to be doing a live session with all four of us doing consulting. So if you've ever wanted to have four people chime in on what's going on in your world and how we might be able to help, free consulting. So join us on the 28th, where we will wrap up this series. This is the second one of 4. We have 2 more. We'll be unpacking more of emotional agility, and then we will do some live processing on the 28th. So join us for that.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and apologies for the technical glitches. I have no idea. We'll get that sorted before next week. But Maria, thank you for keeping the the train on the tracks.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Amy. And we'll see you all next week.